We all know that Israel is increasingly under attack and is being isolated among its neighbors in the Middle East. What you may not know is that a new organization in Europe is mobilizing support for Israel.
They're bringing together legislators and members of parliaments from around the globe. Chris Mitchell has the story from Budapest, Hungary.
This pro-Israel church rally in Budapest, Hungary is a sign of a more visible and passionate support for Israel among some people in Europe and other parts of the world. At the rally, pro-Israel parliamentarians came from Africa, North America, Europe, and as far away as Uruguay. While in Budapest, the parliamentarians joined more than 12,000 people here at Faith Church, the largest evangelical church in Europe. They came to celebrate Israel and to show their support for an undivided Jerusalem. A new organization called the International Israel Allies Caucus Foundation is working to transform that passion into legislative action. In cooperation with Faith Church, they brought together the heads of its caucuses from around the world to Budapest.
When they come here, they see that there are members from 10, 15, 20 other parliaments who are working just like them, and so it really strengthens them. It helps them to understand what legislative and political initiatives are being taken in other countries, and it inspires them to return to their country and do the same thing.
The foundation has established 20 caucuses around the world, with 10 more in the works. It represents an unprecedented effort to marshal support for Israel on a global scale among legislators.
When we look for the Middle East, Israel is the only democratic country there, and Israel is the only country which shares our values.
Along with shared values with Israel, many say Western civilization shares a common enemy, radical Islam.
Israel is the canary in a coal mine warning us, take care of your own business. But it also is very important, of course, that we support Israel because they're part of our civilization.
One of the biggest caucuses is the U.S.-Israel caucus.
I think that this is the time for allies of Israel to step forward, countries around the world that want to support a fellow democracy. And I, as one congressman within the U.S. Congress, will be one of those voices saying this should be the U.S. policy.
During the conference, representatives from 5 continents announced to the press a joint statement urging the international recognition of Jerusalem as the undivided capital of Israel. With a vote looming in the UN Security Council for a Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital, these legislators represent an organized and growing opposition to the prevailing diplomatic winds in defense of Israel.
It has been a wonderful and excellent thing to behold, because when there are parliamentarians from different parts of the world who support Israel, there is hope for their nations, because as you know that the scriptures are saying, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and besides that, the Lord blesses the nation that blesses Israel.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Budapest, Hungary.
Now, finally, some very good news about Israel. We all need to recognize that it's the sole democracy in the sea of a series of dictatorships. And when we thought there was going to be some kind of Arab Spring that would lead to more democracy in the region, what it's led for is a renewed call for Sharia law. We all need to be concerned and be praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Lee Webb has the rest of our top stories from the CBN Newsroom. Lee?
Gordon, the unemployment rate fell slightly in October. It dropped by 1/10 of a point to 9%. That's the first drop since July. The economy added only 80,000 new jobs. That's the lowest in 4 months. Economists project that job growth will remain slow in the months ahead. The Federal Reserve expects the unemployment rate will average 8.6% by the end of next year. The leaders of the world's largest economies have agreed to a plan to help stem Europe's debt crisis. The president of the European Union says the leaders have agreed to increase the resources of the International Monetary Fund so it can provide financial aid to Europe. They've not decided on details, however, of that plan. The leaders are gathered at the G20 Economic Summit in Cannes, France. Much of the attention has been focused there on the problems in Greece. Prime Minister George Papandreou has abandoned his surprise plan to let Greek voters have a say on the bailout package. But the Europeans are worried that the crisis could spread to other countries like Italy and Spain, and so they have turned now to the IMF. The media's onslaught against Herman Cain has done little to change voters' minds. A new Rasmussen poll has Cain ahead of Mitt Romney 26 to 23%. in a new nationwide poll. And as John Waggy reports, Kane's supporters are fighting back against allegations that he sexually harassed former co-workers.
The Georgia businessman has kept a lower profile as hazy details of alleged sexual harassment charges dominate the campaign debate. 3 women are reported to have complaints that Kane sexually harassed them during his time with the National Restaurant Association in the 1990s. The Kane campaign blames the Perry campaign for leaking the story to Politico, and the Perry camp denies it. Now, an outside group supporting Kane has released a hard-hitting ad that suggests the attacks on Kane are racially motivated.
Now we're getting the high-tech lynching of a beautiful man, Herman Cain.
The ad features 1991 testimony from Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, who was also accused of sexual harassment at his confirmation hearings.
And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, you will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured, rather than hung from a tree.
In Iowa, where the 2012 election kicks off in January, voters are curious about the allegations.
That came up with every phone call, and I think there's a concern about it, but I really think that he's above so much of this.
Kane can still be hurt by any new revelations, but in the week since the story broke, the Kane team says it's taken in $1.2 million. That's nearly 3 times what it took in the 3 previous months combined.
The only thing we've really seen this week is that people are doubling their commitment. They're getting more involved because they're so angry at the national press.
John Waggy, CBN News.
Mitt Romney pledges to slash $500 billion in federal spending in his first term if he's elected president. Those cuts would include funding for Amtrak, aid to foreign countries, and federal arts and broadcasting programs. Romney says repealing President Obama's health care plan is also among his top priorities. He offered details of his spending plan Thursday in a speech to New Hampshire voters. More details in future speeches, including one in Washington today. The Obama administration is against displaying a prayer that Franklin Roosevelt prayed on D-Day, 1944. He asked God to give our troops the courage to defeat Nazi Germany. He prayed, "With thy blessing we shall prevail over the unholy forces of our enemy." New legislation would add his prayer to the World War II memorial in Washington. The Obama administration says, though, it would take away from the central message of the memorial. But one World War II veteran told a House committee, this prayer came at a perilous time, yet it was answered in victory at a dear cost of lives. That inscription would be paid for with private donations. A Nebraska school district is under fire for allowing prayer at its high school graduation ceremonies. The American Civil Liberties Union writing a letter to Lakeview Community Schools saying the ceremonies violate students' First Amendment religious rights. The ACLU says it does not matter that the school ceremonies are conducted by an outside group. It contends the events carry an overwhelming message that they're endorsed by the district. The school superintendent says parents run the ceremonies, and he thinks the district has done nothing wrong. People who spend too much time sitting down could have an increased risk of developing cancer, even those who exercise regularly. That's according to new research from the American Institute for Cancer Research. Data shows that about 100,000 new cases of breast and colon cancer each year can be connected to a lack of physical activity. It recommends 30 minutes of physical activity a day, but they say that the other hours matter too. Just getting up and walking around every 60 minutes can cut the risk. So, Gordon, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go walk around a little bit. I'll be back for the next news segment in a little bit.
Okay. I'm going to take my walk in about 50 minutes, but we used to do the show standing up.
You were going to leave me for a minute there. I was a little worried.
We could go back to that. We used to do this part standing up.
That's right.
Would that make us feel better?
I don't know. We better test that out quickly, though.
A North Carolina county is asking the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn a ruling that bans prayers in Jesus' name before its board meetings. The Forsyth County Board of Commissioners had been opening its meetings with prayers that refer to Jesus Christ. In July, the U.S. Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in favor of 2 residents who said the prayers favor Christianity over other religions. The Alliance Defense Fund is representing the county. The ADF says the High Court should decide whether public bodies are required to find out in advance what will be said in prayers. County Commission Vice Chair Deborah Conrad said clergy of other faiths were also welcome to pray at those meetings. Operation Blessing is providing relief to victims of Hurricane Rina in Mexico. Thousands of homes were damaged and many areas are still without clean drinking water. Operation Blessing teams are serving close to 600 meals a day from mobile kitchens. They've also provided more than 18,000 gallons of clean drinking water. Some volunteers are working with the local fire department, giving them tools and supplies to help with cleanup efforts. And you can find out more about what Operation Blessing is doing around the world by going to its website at ob.org.